The research vessel Harmony drifted through the void between stars, its massive hull containing the most diverse collection of intelligent life ever assembled. 12 different species worked together on the ship, each contributing their unique knowledge to the greatest xenobiology study in galactic history. The main conference room buzzed with the sounds of various alien languages being translated through universal communicators. Dr. Maya Torres sat quietly at the curved table, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering forms around her. The Raptani delegate stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide gleaming under the artificial lights. Beside him, the crystalline Vorthak representative refracted light through her translucent body, creating dancing patterns on the walls. The insectoid Klaxon chittered softly as he organized his data tablets with 4 delicate arms. Today's discussion focused on apex predators, and each species had eagerly shared stories of their homeworld's most fearsome hunters. The Raptani spoke of the great thunderstalkers that hunted in packs across the red plains of their world, creatures with razor-sharp claws that could tear through solid rock. Their pack coordination was legendary, and no prey escaped once marked for death. The Vorthak described the crystal wraiths of their silicon-based ecosystem, beings that could phase through solid matter and drain the life force from their victims. These ethereal predators were nearly invisible and struck without warning, leaving only empty husks behind. The Klaxon delegate species had evolved alongside the swarm queens, massive hive-minded creatures that could control thousands of smaller beings simultaneously. These queens ruled entire continents through sheer numbers and perfect coordination, overwhelming any threat through relentless waves of attacks. Each story was more impressive than the last. The Bulgari described their world's void hunters, creatures that could survive in the vacuum of space and hunt between planets. The Nexari spoke of their flame serpents, beings of pure energy that could melt through any substance known to science. The Zephyrians told tales of wind dancers, aerial predators that could fly at supersonic speeds and strike with the force of meteor impacts. As the presentations continued, Maya noticed a pattern. Every species described their apex predators with a mixture of fear and pride. These creatures were monsters that had shaped their evolution, forcing them to develop specific survival strategies and defensive technologies. The predators were always massive, always armed with natural weapons, always possessing some supernatural ability that made them nearly unstoppable. When the room fell silent, all eyes turned to Maya. The human representative had been unusually quiet throughout the discussion, simply listening and taking notes on her tablet. The Raptani delegate leaned forward, his predatory instincts making him curious about Earth's contribution to the conversation. "Dr. Torres," he rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of a born hunter, "we have shared the terrors of our worlds. What apex predator shaped humanity's evolution? What great beast forced your species to develop your survival strategies?" Maya looked up from her tablet, her brown eyes scanning the faces around the table. Some delegates leaned forward eagerly, while others waited with polite interest. The Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with anticipation, and the Klaxon's compound eyes focused intently on the human. A small smile played at the corners of Maya's mouth. She set down her tablet and stood slowly, her movements casual and relaxed. The gesture seemed almost anticlimactic after the dramatic presentations that had preceded it. "Earth's apex predator," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. She paused for a moment, letting the suspense build. Then, still smiling, she raised her right hand and pointed directly at herself. The room erupted in confused chatter. The Raptani delegate's scales shifted color, indicating his bewilderment. The Vorthak's light patterns flickered rapidly, a sign of processing confusion. Several delegates exchanged glances, clearly wondering if they had missed something in the translation. The Klaxon was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "Dr. Torres, I believe there may be a translation error. You appear to be indicating that humans are their own apex predator. This seems unlikely given your species' obvious physical limitations." Maya's smile widened. She had expected this reaction. Humans were indeed physically unremarkable by galactic standards. They possessed no natural weapons, no exceptional strength, no supernatural abilities. Their senses were average at best, their reflexes decent but not extraordinary. By every measure that defined a predator in the galaxy, humans should have been prey animals. No translation error, Maya replied calmly. Humans are indeed Earth's apex predator. We have been for thousands of years, and we achieved that status without claws, fangs, or supernatural abilities. The Reptani delegate's laugh was a harsh bark. Impossible. Your species lacks every adaptation necessary for predation. You have no natural weapons, your bite force is pathetic, and your pursuit speed is embarrassingly slow. How could such a physically weak species possibly dominate a planet? Other delegates murmured agreement. The Bulgari representative, whose species had evolved from ambush predators, shook his massive head. Perhaps humans were apex predators in your planet's past, but evolution has clearly moved beyond such primitive roles. Maya listened to their objections with patience, her smile never wavering. She had heard similar arguments before, during humanity's early contact with galactic civilization. Most species struggled to understand how humans had not only survived, but thrived without obvious predatory adaptations. I understand your skepticism, she said finally. Earth's apex predator doesn't look like what you expect. We don't have the impressive physical presence of your thunderstalkers or the supernatural abilities of your crystal wraiths. But appearances can be deceiving. She moved away from the table, walking slowly around the room. Her movements were fluid and purposeful, and several delegates found themselves tracking her progress with their eyes. There was something about her manner that suggested confidence, a quiet assurance that made them unconsciously alert. Would you like a demonstration? Maya asked, her tone conversational. I could show you exactly why humans earned their place as Earth's apex predator. It would be educational for all of us. The delegates exchanged glances. The suggestion seemed absurd. What could this small, apparently helpless human possibly demonstrate that would convince them? Yet something in her manner suggested she was completely serious. The Reptani delegates' predatory instincts were fully engaged now. This human was either delusional or possessed some hidden capability that wasn't immediately apparent. His species had learned never to underestimate potential prey, even when it seemed harmless. What kind of demonstration? He asked carefully. Maya's smile became positively predatory. A simple hunt. Give me a 30-minute head start somewhere on this ship, then work together to track me down. Use all your natural abilities, your technology, your combined knowledge. If I'm truly just a weak prey animal, it should be easy. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The human was proposing to turn the ship into a hunting ground, with herself as the prey. It seemed like suicide, but her confidence suggested otherwise. The vortex crystalline form pulsed thoughtfully. What would such a demonstration prove? Maya's eyes gleamed. Everything. The delegates agreed to Maya's proposal with the casual confidence of predators who had never failed to catch their prey. They established simple rules: no weapons, no permanent harm, and the game would end when Maya was cornered or after 12 hours had passed. The ship's AI would monitor everything and ensure no actual danger occurred. Maya stood in the center of the conference room, surrounded by 11 of the galaxy's most accomplished species. Each delegate was eager to demonstrate their natural superiority over this strange human who dared to claim predator status. The Reptani delegate's scales had shifted to hunting colors, a deep crimson that indicated his excitement. The vortex crystalline form pulsed with analytical energy as she began calculating search patterns. 30 minutes, Maya said, checking her wrist chronometer. I suggest you use that time to coordinate your strategy. This ship has 47 decks, thousands of corridors, and more hiding places than you might imagine. She turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Don't underestimate your prey. That's always been the first mistake of failed predators. With that, she walked calmly out of the conference room, leaving behind 11 very confident aliens who were already planning her capture. The Raptani delegate immediately took charge, his species' pack-hunting instincts asserting themselves. We divide the ship into sectors. Each of us takes a zone and we maintain constant communication. The human cannot hide from our combined senses. The Vorthek agreed, her analytical mind already processing the ship's layout. Dr. Torres has studied our capabilities for months. She knows our individual strengths, but we can compensate by working together. No single human can outwit 11 specialized predators. The Klaxon delegate's compound eyes gleamed with anticipation. My species excels at pattern recognition. Once we establish her movement patterns, predicting her location becomes simple mathematics. They spent the full 30 minutes planning, dividing the ship into search zones and establishing communication protocols. Each delegate was confident in their role. The Bulgari would use their exceptional hearing to detect movement. The Nexari would monitor energy signatures for heat traces. The Zephyrians would use their natural speed to respond quickly to any sightings. When the hunt began, they moved with the precision of experienced predators. The ship's internal sensors were activated, giving them access to every camera, every motion detector, every environmental monitor. They had technological advantages that no natural prey could overcome. Maya had simply vanished. The first hour passed quickly as the delegates swept through their assigned sectors with methodical efficiency. They checked every obvious hiding spot, every maintenance access, every storage compartment. The ship's A confirmed that Maya was still aboard, but her exact location remained elusive. The Raptani delegate prowled through the lower decks, his enhanced senses alert for any trace of human presence. His species could track prey across continents, following scent trails that were days old. Yet somehow, Maya had left no trail to follow. The Vorthek phase shifted through solid barriers, checking spaces that should have been impossible to access. Her crystalline form allowed her to see through most materials, revealing hidden chambers and secret passages. Still, she found nothing. By the second hour, the delegates were beginning to feel the first stirrings of frustration. The Klaxons. Pattern recognition algorithms were running constantly, analyzing every piece of data from the ship's sensors. The patterns should have been obvious, but Maya seemed to move without any discernible logic. The Bulgari delegate paused in a maintenance corridor, his massive form blocking the narrow passage. His hearing could detect a heartbeat through solid metal, yet these corridors were silent. How could a human move through the ship without making any sound? The Nexari's energy sensors were equally useless. They could detect the heat signature of a small insect from 50 meters away, but Maya appeared to have no thermal presence at all. It was as if she had learned to control her body temperature. The third hour brought the first real surprise. The Zephyrian delegate was moving through the upper decks at his maximum speed when he caught a brief glimpse of movement in his peripheral vision. He spun around, his reflexes allowing him to react in milliseconds, but the corridor was empty. "I saw her," he reported over the communication system. "Deck 37, Section C, she was there for just a moment." The other delegates converged on the location, but their thorough search revealed nothing. No trace of human presence, no indication that anyone had been there recently. The Zephyrian began to doubt his own senses. By the fourth hour, doubt was spreading through the group. The Raptani delegate's confidence was beginning to crack. His species prided themselves on their hunting prowess, yet this human seemed to slip through their carefully coordinated search like smoke. The Vorthek's analytical mind was struggling with the impossibility of the situation. Her calculations suggested that Maya should have been found within the first hour. The ship was large, but not infinite. There were only so many places where a human could hide, and they had checked all of them. The Klaxon delegate's pattern recognition was failing him completely. Instead of revealing Maya's location, his analysis showed that she appeared to be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The data made no sense. The fifth hour brought a new development. The ship's environmental systems began showing minor anomalies. Air circulation patterns were slightly off in certain sectors. Lighting levels fluctuated in seemingly random areas. The gravity generators showed microscopic variations that should have been impossible. the delegates realized with growing unease that Maya wasn't just hiding from them. She was actively manipulating the ship's systems, using her knowledge of human technology to create advantages they couldn't predict or counter. The Bulgari delegate found himself jumping at shadows, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Footsteps echoed through corridors that were supposed to be empty. Doors opened and closed with no apparent cause. The Nexary's energy sensors were being confused by false heat signatures that appeared and disappeared without warning. Something was creating thermal illusions, making it impossible to distinguish between real targets and phantom readings. By the 6th hour, the psychological pressure was beginning to affect the entire group. The Reptani delegate's hunting instincts were screaming that he was being watched, but every time he spun around, there was nothing there. His scales had shifted to defensive colors, indicating stress and uncertainty. The Vorthak's logical mind was struggling to process the contradictory data. Her species prided themselves on their analytical abilities, but Maya seemed to be operating according to rules that defied analysis. Every prediction failed, every logical conclusion proved wrong. The Klaxon was experiencing something his species had never encountered: complete pattern failure. His mind was designed to find order in chaos, but Maya's movements created chaos from order. She was actively disrupting their search patterns, staying one step ahead of their coordination. The 7th hour brought the realization that they were no longer the hunters. Somehow, without any of them noticing the transition, Maya had turned the tables. She wasn't running from them anymore. She was hunting them. The Zephyrian delegate was the first to admit what they were all thinking. She's not hiding from us, she's studying us, learning our patterns, our weaknesses, our individual responses to stress. The Bulgari's massive form shuddered as he realized the truth. We're not hunting her, she's hunting us. The psychological warfare had begun, and Maya was winning. The delegates found themselves second-guessing every decision, jumping at every shadow, suspecting traps around every corner. Their superior senses and advanced technology meant nothing when their prey understood them better than they understood themselves. The 8th hour was approaching, and the delegates were beginning to understand that they had drastically underestimated their opponent. Maya wasn't just Earth's apex predator. She was something far more dangerous, a predator who could adapt to any situation, learn from any opponent, and turn any advantage into a weapon. The hunt continued, but now the roles were reversed. The predators had become the prey, and Maya, Taurus, was about to teach them exactly why humans had earned their place at the top of Earth's food chain. The 8th hour marked the beginning of Maya's true demonstration. The psychological pressure she had been building through 7 hours of impossible evasion now transformed into active predation. The delegates were about to learn what it meant to be hunted by Earth's apex predator. The Reptani delegate was prowling through the ship's central corridor when he heard his own voice calling out behind him. Contact on Deck 15, Section B, moving toward the central hub. But he was on Deck 12, and he had never made that report. His scales flashed warning colors as he realized Maya had somehow recorded his voice and was using it against them. The communication system erupted in chaos as similar false reports flooded the channels. Each delegate heard their own voice making contradictory announcements, creating confusion about who was where and what was happening. The Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with frustration as she tried to filter real communications from the false ones. She's compromised our communication system, the Klaxon delegate chittered over the chaos. How does a human understand our technology better than we do? The answer was simple but terrifying. Maya had spent months aboard the ship, quietly observing everything. While the delegates had focused on their own research, she had been studying them, learning their systems, their habits, their weaknesses. She had turned their own ship into a weapon against them. The Bulgari delegate was moving through the lower maintenance tunnels when he heard footsteps echoing behind him. He spun around, his massive form filling the narrow passage, but saw nothing. The footsteps stopped. When he turned back, they resumed, perfectly matching his pace. The psychological effect was devastating, making him question every sound he Heard, the Nexuri's energy sensors were showing heat signatures that seemed to mock him. Maya appeared to be simultaneously in multiple locations, her thermal image popping up on different decks at the same time. The readings were impossible, but the sensors insisted they were accurate. The Nexari realized she was somehow manipulating the ship's heating systems to create false signatures. By the 9th hour, the delegates were exhibiting clear signs of stress. The Zephyrian's natural speed was becoming erratic as he jumped at shadows, his movements no longer graceful but panicked. The Vorthic's analytical processes were breaking down as she struggled to make sense of contradictory data. Maya began to appear in their peripheral vision, just for split seconds. A glimpse of movement at the edge of sight, gone before they could react. The Raptani delegate would catch a flash of brown hair disappearing around a corner, but when he investigated, the corridor was empty. The psychological impact was crushing his confidence. The ship's lighting began to fluctuate in patterns that seemed random but felt purposeful. Corridors would dim just as the delegate entered them, creating pools of shadow that could hide any threat. Emergency lighting would flicker on and off, creating a strobe effect that played havoc with their vision. The Klaxon delegate's pattern recognition was being deliberately overloaded. Maya was feeding false data into the ship's sensors, creating patterns that appeared meaningful but led nowhere. His mind was designed to find order, but she was creating chaos that looked like order. The mental strain was enormous. The 10th hour brought the first direct confrontation. The Bulgari delegate was searching a storage bay when he heard breathing behind him. He turned slowly, his massive form ready for combat, and saw Maya sitting calmly on a stack of supply crates not 3 meters away. She was simply watching him, her brown eyes calm and alert. She made no move to run or hide. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if studying an interesting specimen. The Bulgari froze, his predatory instincts screaming warnings that made no sense. "Hello, Bulgari," Maya said quietly. "You've been looking for me." The Bulgari's response was instinctive. He lunged forward with the speed that had made his species legendary ambush predators. But Maya was gone, vanished as if she had never been there. The Bulgari's massive claws scraped against empty metal where she had been sitting. "She was here," he reported breathlessly over the communication system. "Storage Bay 7, Deck 18. She spoke to me, then vanished." The other delegates converged on the location, but their search revealed nothing. No trace of human presence, no indication that Maya had ever been there. The Bulgari began to doubt his own senses, wondering if stress had made him hallucinate. But Maya's psychological warfare was far from over. The Vorthak was the next to experience direct contact. She was phase-shifting through the ship's outer hull, checking spaces that should have been impossible to access, when she heard applause behind. Her Maya was floating in the zero-gravity maintenance tunnel, clapping slowly. She was wearing a standard maintenance suit, but somehow she had anticipated the Vorthic's search pattern and positioned herself perfectly. "Impressive," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the suit's communication system. "Your species' phase-shifting abilities are remarkable, but predictable." The Vorthic's crystalline form flared with analytical energy as she tried to process Maya's presence. The human should not have been able to access this area, should not have known the Vorthak would be there. Yet here she was, calm and collected, while floating in hard vacuum. "How did you know I would be here?" the Vorthak asked, her logical mind demanding answers. Maya's smile was visible through her helmet's faceplate. "Because I've been watching you for months. I know how your species thinks, how you analyze problems, how you search for solutions. You're following logical patterns, and humans excel at predicting logic." Before the Vorthak could respond, Maya activated her suit's thruster pack and shot away through the tunnel system with practiced ease. The Vorthak gave chase, her phase shifting abilities allowing her to move through solid obstacles, but Maya had already vanished into the ship's complex infrastructure. The psychological impact on the delegates was severe. Maya wasn't just evading them. She was confronting them individually, demonstrating that she knew their capabilities better than they knew hers. She was inside their decision-making processes, anticipating their moves before they made them. The Klaxon delegate experienced his encounter while searching the ship's computer core. He was analyzing data streams when Maya's voice spoke directly into his auditory sensors. "You're looking for patterns that don't exist," she said calmly. "Human behavior doesn't follow the logical algorithms your species uses. We're chaos pretending to be order." The Klaxon spun around, his forearms moving in defensive postures, but Maya was nowhere to be seen. Her voice seemed to come from the computer system itself, as if she had become part of the ship's infrastructure. "Your pattern recognition is impressive," Maya continued, her voice echoing through the chamber, "but it's also your weakness. You expect behavior to follow rules, but humans make their own rules as they go." The Klaxon's compound eyes searched frantically for any sign of Maya's presence. The psychological pressure was unbearable. She was inside his head, disrupting his thought processes, making him question his own abilities. By the 11th hour, the delegates were no longer functioning as a coordinated team. The psychological warfare had broken down their cooperation. They were jumping at shadows, second-guessing each other's reports, and losing confidence in their own senses. The Reptani delegate found himself alone in a corridor, his pack hunting instincts screaming that he was being stalked. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every sound suggested an approaching predator. His scales had shifted to full defensive coloration, indicating maximum stress. Maya appeared at the far end of the corridor, walking toward him with calm, measured steps. She wasn't running or hiding anymore. She was approaching like a predator that had cornered its prey. The Raptani's instincts told him to retreat, but his pride demanded he stand his ground. "You wanted to see Earth's apex predator," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly down the corridor. "Now you understand. We don't need claws or fangs or supernatural abilities. We have something far more dangerous." The Raptani's throat constricted as he asked, "What?" Maya's smile was absolutely predatory. "Persistence, intelligence, and the ability to turn any environment into our hunting ground." She stopped just out of reach, close enough to demonstrate her complete lack of fear. "Your species evolved to be perfect hunters in your environment. But humans evolved to be perfect hunters in any environment. We adapt, we learn, we never stop." Hunting. The Raptani realized with growing horror that he was no longer the predator in this situation. Somehow, without him noticing the transition, Maya had become the hunter and he had become the prey. The psychological reversal was complete, the 11th hour was ending, and the delegates were beginning to understand the true nature of humanity's predatory advantage. Maya hadn't just evaded them. She had systematically broken down their confidence, their coordination, and their sense of superiority. Earth's apex predator was about to deliver the final lesson. The 11th hour brought complete psychological breakdown among the delegates. Maya had systematically dismantled their confidence, their coordination, and their understanding of predator-prey relationships. Now she was about to demonstrate the final and most devastating aspect of human predation, the ability to turn prey animals against each other. The Reptani delegate was prowling through the ship's central hub when he heard the Vorthex's crystalline voice over the communication system. "I have visual contact with the human. She's heading toward your position, moving through the maintenance shafts above you." The Raptani looked up at the ceiling, his enhanced senses searching for any sign of Maya's presence. His scales shifted to hunting colors as he prepared to intercept her. This was his chance to restore his species' pride and prove that pack hunters could still catch their prey, but the Vorthak was nowhere near the central hub. She was 3 decks below, searching through the ship's engineering sections. The voice over the communication system was Maya's perfect imitation, designed to manipulate the Raptani's movements and position him exactly where she wanted him. Maya had been studying their voices, their speech patterns, their individual mannerisms, for months. She could mimic any of them perfectly, and the universal translators made it impossible to distinguish between authentic and false communications. The delegate's own technology had become a weapon against them. The Bulgari delegate received what appeared to be an urgent message from the Klaxon. "Emergency situation in Storage Bay 12. The human has somehow activated the gravity generators at dangerous levels. I need immediate assistance." The The Bulgari's protective instincts kicked in immediately. Despite his frustration with the hunt, he couldn't ignore a fellow delegate in distress. He rushed toward Storage Bay 12, his massive form moving with surprising speed through the ship's corridors. When he arrived, he found the bay empty except for the Nexari delegate, who was already there searching for the supposed emergency. Both delegates realized simultaneously that they had been manipulated. Neither the klaxon nor any emergency existed. Maya had used their own social instincts against them. "She's turning us against each other," the Nexari said, his energy sensors flickering with agitation, "making us waste time chasing false leads while she positions herself for her next move." The Bulgari nodded grimly. "Human pack tactics. Divide and conquer. We're not coordinating anymore. We're reacting to her manipulation." Meanwhile, the Vorthak was experiencing her own psychological assault. Maya had begun appearing in reflective surfaces throughout the ship, her image visible in polished metal panels, glass screens, and crystal formations. But when the Vorthak turned to look directly, Maya was never there. The effect was maddening. The Vorthak's analytical mind tried to process the impossible sightings, but the data made no sense. Maya seemed to exist in reflections but not in reality, present in the ship's surfaces but absent from physical space. The klaxon delegate was facing a different type of torment. His pattern recognition algorithms were being fed deliberately contradictory information. Maya would appear in one location, then immediately show up somewhere else entirely, creating movement patterns that violated the laws of physics. His compound eyes tracked her image on multiple security cameras simultaneously. But the timestamp showed she was in different locations at the exact same moment. The logical impossibility was causing his analytical processes to spiral into confusion. The Zephyrian delegate's encounter was even more disturbing. Maya began shadowing his movements, staying just at the edge of his peripheral vision. When he moved fast, she matched his speed. When he stopped, she stopped. When he changed direction, she changed direction. But she was always just out of direct sight, visible only in his peripheral vision. The Zephyrian's natural speed advantage meant nothing when his opponent could somehow predict and match his every movement. The psychological pressure was enormous. The 12th hour began with the delegates scattered throughout the ship, their coordination completely broken. Maya had used their own communication system against them, fed them false information, and exploited their individual psychological vulnerabilities. They were no longer a pack of predators. They were isolated prey animals being systematically hunted. The Reptani delegate found himself in a storage compartment, his back to the wall, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. His pack-hunting instincts had been completely reversed. Instead of stalking prey, he was hiding from a predator. Maya's voice echoed through the compartment's ventilation system. "Your species prides itself on pack coordination, but you've been hunting alone for the past 3 hours. I've isolated each of you, broken your communication, and turned your strengths into weaknesses." The Raptani's scales flashed defensive colors as he realized the truth. Maya hadn't just evaded their hunt. She had systematically destroyed their ability to hunt. She had turned their own instincts against them. "How?" he asked the empty air, knowing Maya could hear him through the ship's monitoring systems. "Because humans don't just hunt animals," Maya replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We hunt other predators. We study them, learn their weaknesses, and turn their own abilities against them. It's how we became the apex predator on a planet full of creatures stronger and faster than we are." The Bulgari delegate was experiencing his own moment of realization. He was hiding in a maintenance tunnel, his massive form cramped in the narrow space, when he understood that his behavior had completely reversed. He was no longer the ambush predator. He was the prey trying to avoid being ambushed. Maya's psychological warfare had been perfect. She had taken each delegate's primary strength and turned it into a vulnerability. The Raptani's pack instincts had been isolated and confused. The Vorthek's analytical mind had been overloaded with contradictory data. The klaxon's pattern recognition had been fed chaos, disguised as order. The Bulgari's ambush tactics had been anticipated and countered. The Nexary's energy sensors had been fooled by thermal illusions. The Zephyrian's speed had been matched and predicted. Each delegate had been systematically neutralized using their own specializations against them, but Maya's most devastating weapon was still to come. She began broadcasting a message throughout the ship, her voice reaching every delegate. Simultaneously through the communication system they had trusted. "You've been wondering how a physically weak human could dominate a planet full of stronger predators," she said, her tone conversational but with an underlying steel. "The answer is simple. We don't fight stronger opponents, we outlast them." The delegates listened with growing dread as Maya continued her explanation. They were beginning to understand that they hadn't just been outmaneuvered. They had been systematically educated about human predatory behavior. "Your species evolved to be perfect hunters in specific environments," Maya continued. "But humans evolved to be adequate hunters in any environment. We adapt faster than our prey can evolve defenses. We learn faster than our opponents can change tactics." The Vorthic's crystalline form pulsed with the painful realization that every move they had made had been predicted and countered. Maya hadn't just been hiding from them. She had been 3 steps ahead from the very beginning. "We're persistence predators," Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of evolutionary authority. "We follow our prey until they exhaust themselves trying to escape. We don't need to be faster or stronger. We just need to be more patient." The Klaxon delegate understood with growing horror that the 12-hour hunt had been a demonstration of exactly that principle. Maya had allowed them to exhaust themselves while she conserved her energy, controlled the environment, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. "But more than that," Maya continued, her voice now carrying a predatory edge that made each delegate's survival instincts scream warnings. "We're social predators. We share information, coordinate our efforts, and multiply our individual capabilities through cooperation." The delegates realized that Maya had been demonstrating the opposite as well. She had broken their cooperation, isolated them from each other, and turned their social instincts against them. She had shown them what happened when the prey became the predator. "The hunt is almost over," Maya announced, her voice carrying the finality of a predator that had cornered its prey. "But before we finish, I want you to understand one more thing about Earth's apex predator." The delegates waited in their scattered hiding places, each one alone and vulnerable, as Maya prepared to deliver her final lesson. They had learned about human persistence, adaptability, and psychological warfare. Now they were about to discover the most terrifying aspect of human predation. The moment when the hunt becomes personal, the 12th hour was ending, and Maya Torres was about to demonstrate why humanity had earned its place as the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. The ship's main observation deck was a vast chamber with transparent walls that offered a breathtaking view of the stars. Maya Torres sat calmly in the center of the room, her legs crossed in a meditation pose, watching the cosmic vista with serene appreciation. She had been there for the past hour, completely visible to the ship's sensors, yet none of the delegates had found her. The irony was perfect. While 11 of the galaxy's most accomplished predators had been frantically searching the ship's hidden corners and maintenance tunnels, their quarry had been sitting in plain sight in the most obvious location possible. The observation deck was where the delegates often gathered for meetings where they came to think and reflect. It was the last place they would look for a hiding human. Maya's wrist chronometer showed 11 hours and 57 minutes since the hunt began. In 3 minutes, the demonstration would officially end, but she had already proven her point beyond any doubt. The delegates were scattered throughout the ship, exhausted, confused, and psychologically broken. They had learned the hard way what it meant to be hunted by Earth's apex predator. The ship's communication system crackled to life with Maya's voice. "Attention delegates, the hunt is over. Please report to the main observation deck for debriefing." The response was immediate and revealing. Instead of the confident acknowledgments they would have given 12 hours earlier, the delegates' replies were hesitant, almost fearful. They had been so thoroughly dominated that they were now wary of walking into what might be another trap, The Raptani delegate was the first to arrive, his scales still showing defensive coloration. He entered the observation deck cautiously, his predatory instincts screaming warnings about the exposed position. When he saw Maya sitting calmly in the center of the room, he stopped short. "You've been here the entire time," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. Maya looked up with the same calm smile she had worn at the beginning of the hunt. "For the past hour, yes. I was monitoring your search. Patterns through the ship's sensors. You were also focused on finding me in hidden places that you never thought to check the most obvious location." The other delegates began arriving, each one showing clear signs of stress and exhaustion. The Vorthic's crystalline form was dim, her analytical processes still struggling to make sense of what had happened. The Klaxon's compound eyes were unfocused, his pattern recognition systems overloaded by 12 hours of contradictory data. The Bulgari delegate's massive form slumped with fatigue. His species' ambush tactics had been completely useless against an opponent who had anticipated every move. The Nexari's energy sensors flickered erratically. Still confused by the false thermal signatures Maya had created, the Zephyrian delegate entered last, his natural speed reduced to a cautious walk. The psychological pressure of being constantly shadowed had broken his confidence in his own abilities. He looked around the observation deck as if expecting Maya to vanish again. When all 11 delegates had assembled, Maya stood slowly and walked to the center of the room. The movement was casual, relaxed, but every delegate tracked her progress with their eyes. Their predatory instincts were still active, but now they were focused on watching a superior predator rather than hunting prey. 12 hours ago, you asked about Earth's apex predator, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. You expected me to describe some massive creature with claws and fangs. Instead, I told you that humans had earned that title. She gestured toward the assembled delegates. You didn't believe me. You saw a small, physically weak creature with no natural weapons and assumed I was delusional. So I offered to demonstrate. The Raptani delegate's scales shifted to neutral colors as he processed the implications. You didn't just evade us, you hunted us, Maya nodded. Exactly. Earth's apex predator doesn't dominate through size or strength. We dominate through intelligence, adaptability, and psychological warfare. We turn our opponent's strengths against them. She began walking around the group, her movements purposeful and controlled. Several delegates found themselves unconsciously tracking her progress, their predatory instincts still engaged despite their exhaustion. Your species evolved to be perfect hunters in your specific environments, Maya continued. The Raptani developed pack coordination for hunting on open plains. The Vorthak evolved analytical minds for navigating complex crystal formations. The Klaxon created pattern recognition for tracking through dense insect swarms. Each delegate felt the weight of her analysis as she described their evolutionary history with perfect accuracy. She had studied them all, understood their capabilities better than they understood themselves. But humans evolved to be adequate hunters in any environment, Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of evolutionary truth. We didn't develop specialized abilities because we didn't need them. We developed the ability to adapt to any situation. The Vorthic's crystalline form pulsed with reluctant understanding. You used our own specializations against us. My analytical mind was overloaded with contradictory data. The Klaxon's pattern recognition was fed chaos. The Raptani's pack instincts were isolated and confused. Maya smiled approvingly. Exactly. Humans excel at identifying weaknesses and exploiting them. We study our opponents until we understand them better than they understand themselves. Then we turn their own nature against them. The Bulgari delegate shifted uncomfortably. But how did you know we would react the way we did? How could you predict our behavior so accurately? Because I've been watching all of you for months, Maya replied. Living with you, working with you, studying your individual personalities and species characteristics. I know how the Raptani responds to pack separation. I know how the Vorthak processes conflicting information. I know how the Klaxon reacts to pattern disruption. She paused, letting the implications sink in. That's what makes humans dangerous. We're social predators who share information and coordinate our efforts. But we're also individual predators who can adapt our tactics to any opponent. The Klaxon delegates' compound eyes focused on Maya with new understanding. You weren't just hiding from us. You were conducting a behavioral study. Learning how we think, how we react, how we make decisions, Maya nodded. Human predation isn't just about catching prey, it's about understanding prey. We learn our opponent's weaknesses, their fears, their decision-making processes, then we use that knowledge to our advantage. The Nexari delegate's energy sensors finally stabilized as he asked, "What about the false thermal signatures? How did you manipulate our technology?" "Simple," Maya replied. "I spent months learning how your equipment works. Humans are tool users. By nature, we don't just use tools. We understand them, modify them, and adapt them to our needs. Your own technology became a weapon against you." The Zephyrian delegate spoke up, his voice still carrying traces of the psychological pressure he had endured. The shadowing technique. "How did you match my speed and predict my movements?" Maya's smile became predatory. "Because I studied your movement patterns for months. I knew how you would react to different stimuli, which directions you would choose. When faced with obstacles, humans excel at pattern recognition and behavioral prediction." The delegates exchanged glances, beginning to understand the full scope of what they had experienced. Maya hadn't just outmaneuvered them. She had systematically analyzed their individual and collective behavior, then used that knowledge to dominate them completely. "But the most important lesson," Maya continued, "is about persistence. Your species evolved to be efficient hunters who catch prey quickly or abandon the hunt. Humans evolved to never give up. We follow our prey until they exhaust themselves." The Reptani delegate's scales flashed with recognition. "The 12-hour time limit? You were demonstrating persistence predation. Wearing us down psychologically until we couldn't function effectively." Maya nodded. "Exactly. We don't need to be faster or stronger than our prey. We just need to be more patient. We can maintain pursuit longer than any other predator in the galaxy." She stopped in the center of the observation deck, surrounded by 11 of the galaxy's most accomplished species, all of whom now understood exactly why humans had earned their place as Earth's apex predator. "Your species developed impressive specializations," Maya said, her voice carrying respect for their abilities. "But specialization creates vulnerability. Humans developed adaptability, which creates strength in any situation." The Vortex analytical mind was finally processing the full implications. "You're saying that humans became apex predators not despite their physical limitations, but because of them?" "Exactly," Maya replied. "We couldn't outrun our prey, so we developed persistence. We couldn't overpower our opponents, so we developed intelligence. We couldn't dominate through size, so we developed psychology." The observation deck fell silent as the delegates contemplated this revelation. They had spent 12 hours learning firsthand what it meant to be hunted by a species that had evolved to be the ultimate predator of other predators. Maya looked around at the assembled delegates, her expression carrying both satisfaction and respect. "You asked about Earth's apex predator, now you know. We're not the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest, but we're the most dangerous because we can adapt to hunt anything, anywhere, anytime." She gestured toward the stars visible through the observation deck's transparent walls. "That's how humanity spread across the galaxy so quickly. We don't need specific environments or conditions. We adapt to whatever we find and make it our hunting ground." The Reptani delegate's scales had shifted to colors indicating deep thought. "This changes everything about how we view human capabilities." Maya's smile was warm but carried an edge of predatory satisfaction. "Good, because now you understand why you should never underestimate prey that seems weak or helpless. Sometimes, the most dangerous predators are the ones that don't look like predators at all." The demonstration was over, but the lesson would last forever. The delegates had learned that Earth's apex predator wasn't defined by claws or fangs, but by something far more dangerous: the ability to turn any opponent's strengths into weaknesses, any environment into a hunting ground, and any hunt into a psychological warfare campaign. Maya Torres had proven her point beyond any doubt. Humans were indeed Earth's apex predator, and now 11 of the galaxy's most accomplished species understood exactly why that should make them very, very careful about underestimating humanity ever again.